The truth of all things sits right here in this moment. We cannot be all of who we are called to be without doing the healing work. So welcome to the Anika Apple podcast. Now, I know for those of you that follow the podcast, you're like, wait a minute, divine guidance was last week. You're right. And here I am with this week's message, because I'm always going to do what God tells me to do. And so I am here. So welcome to this week's episode of the Anika Apple podcast. I am excited to just share with you that as we go throughout this month, and really for a good portion of this year, we're going to be talking about healing from all different perspectives. And today's message is really special. I'm going to spend some time talking to you, really flowing prophetically around why healing is so important, why it's critical for us at this time, why you're seeing so many messages around healing coming to you all the time, like showing up in your news feed and people talking about it in ways that they are changing what's happening inside their physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual body, their spiritual self through their healing journey. And it's a critical thing. And so I'm really excited to get into why that is important for you, why it matters for me, why it's a part of my work. And so that's where our journey will take us today. But of course, I want to start, as I always do, with a message from my heart to yours. So here we are in March, and it's Women's History Month. And we just celebrated International Women's Day over the weekend. Yesterday was a beautiful day calling Black women to rest. I missed that memo. I definitely was not resting yesterday. And I came today very intentionally with my Woman of God t-shirt on from God is Dope. I love this brand. And it says love women and protect women. And that is from my heart to yours. I want you to pause for a second and think about what women bring. And this in no way, I think we have this mindset in our humanness that when we're talking about one, we can't be like in some way that's taking away from someone else. And that simply is not true. We can talk about women and not be taking away from men. What we're doing is highlighting the differences so that we can gain a better collective understanding of our experiences, which makes us actually closer knit together. It gives us space to have more empathy and show more love for one another. And it's the same reason you walk into a room, and it could be a networking event or a family reunion, and you spend time asking people about what's happening on their journey. You want to get to know so that you can become closer. But a lot of times in these moments where we start to talk about like what's happening with people, we start to feel like, well, that's taking away from your time or space. And that simply is not true. You can protect women and be a phenomenal male figure. Like there is nothing, they're not mutually exclusive. Here's the thing. I want you to think about the creator of human life, like where it comes through. It comes from women. And we were given that ability. We can debate it. I'm happy to debate it. You don't bring it to the chat, bring it to my inbox, but we can debate why that is the most beautiful gift that we have in our humanness. And I would tell you that for a gender to have the opportunity to give life, to be equipped to do it, we always have choice with whether or not it's our path, right? But to be equipped to do it is such a beautiful thing. And there's a mismatch with the level of respect that we see for women. Our experiences are not the same, or not equivalent to this beautiful gift that we have the ability to bring in this world. It almost tends to be treated in the opposite. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples. First and foremost, I look at the history of who we have been as women, right? Like there was this journey early on where it's a woman's place is in the home, and we have morphed ourselves in so many ways to do a lot of work outside of the home, whether it's philanthropy or if it is working a career or entrepreneurism, et cetera, so forth, sitting in spaces in politics and the judicial system. We have moved into places all throughout the world, all throughout different aspects of business and society. And yet we still have experiences that are very different than our male counterparts. It was about 10 years ago when I was working at a large beverage corporation, and I ran a market for that business. And so I was responsible for everything, sales, delivery, operations, all of that. And I had a customer who had a nice sized business, and and he was a client of ours. And he reached out because there were some issues that he had been experiencing. And so, I'm talking to him, and he says to me, "No disrespect to you, ma'am, but I'd like to talk to the man in charge." And I was like, huh, 10 years ago. Okay. And I'm like, so you're talking to the woman in charge. Like, I am responsible for everything related to how we serve our customers in this market. And he's like, well, I kind of wanted to talk to the man. And I said, respectfully, the next higher person would be the regional president who runs all of this region. And he trusts me implicitly. That's why he hired me to run this market. And so what will end up happening is I'm happy to give you his phone number, but he is going to redirect you to me. And we'll end up working together anyway. So here's what I would say to you. Why don't we make an agreement that you're going to tell me what's going on. I'm going to tell you how we'll reconcile this. And if you're not satisfied with the progress of our service in 30 days, then I'll connect you with the regional president. You can have whatever conversations you want to have with him. And begrudgingly, he really didn't want to agree to that because he was holding some notions about women in the workplace. And ultimately, what he found is that not only did we over deliver his expectations and gain some additional business from him, but he said to me at the end of our time together, which was less than that 30 days, he said to me, you've changed my opinion about women in the workforce. He said, you are as capable as any man that I have ever worked with. And your word has been golden. You've been consistent in what you said you were going to do. And when your team didn't meet my expectations, the way you handled it is the way I would have handled it myself in my own business. And I would just say to you, to any men that's listening that hears this message, when was the last time that you walked into any kind of engagement, your job, something that you're responsible for, and someone said to you, I want to see the woman in charge, where there was an assumption immediately that you were not capable? Now, if that assumption is around your performance or something like that, okay, that could be a level playing field for us. But when it just is simply walking in the door based on gender, you've likely never had that experience. But I can guarantee you that if you poll the women around you, at least 80% have run into something like that. We're not at a place where there is true equity yet, but it's deserved. Far deserved. And what I would say to all of us is that it's time for us to chart a path forward where we begin to eradicate the behaviors that create this inequity. And you may not realize it, but we are far closer to leaning back to where we were than we are to the progress that we should be making. And I don't say that tongue in cheek. That's not an intention to try and stir up anything. It just is to ground you in what is true. And the reality is that we don't want to see what this world looks like if that is the case. We would not enjoy the experience that we have in the world of having any person limited in the ability of what they have to give and birth in this world. We would not want that to be. And there are hundreds of stories, movies that you can watch about women who've transformed entire industries and ways of thinking. I'm sure many of you have experienced just those incredible female leaders in different businesses. And you think about the relationship with people who have run households and who seem to manage 97 different things while standing on one leg, well, they deserve the accolades, the respect, and the space, and they deserve to be treated equitably. So, from my heart to yours, I just want to call you forward on looking at what you are doing to create more equality in the world. How are you doing your part to help protect women? What are you doing to make sure that women feel genuineness in your love for them? And that is from my heart to yours. So let's get into the message for the podcast episode today. So here we find ourselves with a lot of information swirling around in the world all the time, talking about healing. And you might wonder to yourself, like, is this becoming the next buzzword? Well, here's the thing. It is much deeper than that. Like, you're seeing things online talking about all of the different services that are offered, different ways that you can take care of your physical body, different ways you can take care of your emotional body, different ways that you can take care of your spiritual self. And you're seeing it from one after the next after the next. It's a clarion call. And that's really important for you to recognize, because the truth of all things sits right here in this moment. We cannot be all of who we are called to be without doing the healing work. I said in a recent post, in a recent podcast, that until we do the healing work, we won't be able to fully embrace all of what else is available to us. The healing work is a part of our journey. There is a beautiful interview that I did with Dr. Avis Jones DeWeaver that is circulating right now on my YouTube and on the other social media channels. I definitely encourage you to check it out. But we had a really great conversation about healing as a success strategy. And it absolutely is that. That in particular is speaking to women, Black women in particular, around how the healing work that we do helps to position us to be able to move and navigate better in our corporate workplaces. That said, the message is appropriate for all of us. And as I was preparing for this week's episode, not surprisingly, God sent me a pivot, because this is a conversation for all of us to engage in. The work that we do to heal is going to transform the world, not just us individually. We have a very limited thinking of how we're connected one to another, but we can't truly see without doing healing work. The healing that we do on ourselves creates a pathway for us to create change and transformation in the world. The level of awareness, awakenedness that people have is impacted by their healing journey. And so when you are in a place where you refuse to look at yourself, to do the internal work to heal, you're stymieing the progress of mankind. That doesn't mean that it won't move on without you, because certainly it will. But your experience, the potential of what you had to bring to this world, your purpose, go unfulfilled. So, what does that mean to us really? First and foremost, it's really important for us to recognize that our healing work is a beautiful journey over time that helps us see ourselves as in the same way that our Creator sees us. We heal so that we have different experiences. We heal so that the truth of who we are comes forward. We heal so that we can become the best and highest versions of ourselves. We heal so that we can support one another. And what we call healing, no different than if you broke your arm or your leg and you're putting it back together, hopefully in even better condition it was at the time of the break. It's allowing things to come back together in the way that they were intended. Well, what happened to us? How is it that we need healing? Well, throughout your lifetime, you've had a multitude of experiences that have changed the condition of your mind, your body, your emotions, and your spirit. And so all of these things have been impacted by the experiences in your life. And it's not just limited to trauma. Trauma, which we tend to think of as a specific event, an immediate thing where things begin to happen as a result from trauma. Post traumatically, we have different experiences and there are shifts and changes in our mindset. So we have all of that happening. But it also can be from the ongoing way that you were treated. And it can also be from things that are in your lineage, in your DNA, that came from the experiences that your ancestors had. And so, if your ancestors had a traumatic journey through their life, then you are navigating the trauma and experiences of your own life and the things that are unhealed that came through your lineage from your ancestors into your own experience. We have an opportunity to see the truth of who we are through a lens that's far more broad than our own. That's what healing does for us. Healing creates a place for you to say yes to seeing into yourself in a way that reveals what needs attention. A lot of times these things bubble up to the surface for us and we ignore them. Sometimes we push them to the side because we're embarrassed or feel shamed that we react or respond in a certain way. So think about the last time someone said something to you and you had a significant outburst. And you look to yourself and you're like, why did I even respond in that way? Why was this such a big deal to me? It's not a big deal as I step back from the situation and look at it in the grand scheme of things. But we do that because there's something on the inside of us that's unhealed. Dr. Avis asked me a really great question around our ability to connect and build healthy relationships, like partner relationships with people. Why do we struggle with creating those relationships? Is it true that because of the experiences that we've had in the past and potentially what could be there in our lineage, that creates a place for us where we want to protect ourselves, where we feel so open and vulnerable, we want to stop ourselves from being an experience where we could be hurt again? And so then do we do things in relationships that keep us back from allowing our full person to be experienced by our partner? Absolutely. Even the choice in the way that you date will show up with ways that you are trying to self sabotage the relationship. And some things are far less pronounced, but they're behavior patterns that you may or may not see. For example, one of the things that I talk about and is really near and dear to my heart because it's been a huge part of my healing journey, I call it the ice castle. For me, the ice castle was my place of retreat, right? And so I would go to the ice castle, meaning I start to retract from being in the relationship with someone and I go to a place that they can't get into, right? It's freezing cold. It's an ice castle. It's not inviting. It's not, it's not welcome for other people to come in there. That's my place of closing myself off from relationships to avoid the feeling of vulnerability, which then is connected to rejection. It's connected to fear. It's connected to sadness. It's connected to hurt. It's whatever those things are. That's my journey, right? And so similarly, we all have these things, these patterns of what happens to us when we feel vulnerability, when we feel fear, when we are unsafe in the hands of other people, in the environment where other people are, even in our workplaces. And so when we have that experience, when that behavior starts to show up for us, we can begin to recognize there's a pattern here of something that needs to be healed. Now, perhaps you're like, oh no, Anika, I'm good. My ice castle works really well for me, or whatever your version is. Sure, it does. In the moment where you're trying to hold yourself back from something that you are afraid of. But guess what? As you go throughout your lifetime, no matter what happens, whenever you feel that same feeling of vulnerability, your first instinct is going to be to hightail it back to whatever the safe haven place is. And some of you are like, well, why can't I have my safe haven place? Well, you can, but then it will keep you from having the experiences that you say you want in your lifetime. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. I'm not worthy of love, or I'm never going to be loved. But yet, every time someone starts to do the work to show you love, you start to retract. And then you're like, see, I told you I was never going to experience love. Well, of course not, because you've created an environment for yourself where it's simply impossible for someone to go through the journey of getting to know you, much less to really demonstrate the depth of love to you, because you're so fearful. In all of our ways and all of our behaviors, there are patterns, and some patterns support us. Some patterns are absolutely what we need in order to be successful. Other patterns work against us. We say we want one thing and we behave in a way that is misaligned, and then we find ourselves living a life that is less than what we deserve and what we have asked for. Healing is required. The other side of this is that right now there are a lot of you who are looking at the world around us and we're saying, this is shenanigans. Like, what's going on? We need to fix this stuff. We absolutely have work to do. Let us all agree wholeheartedly and just lean in and say, yes, we need to fix some stuff, right? But you can't. What do you mean I can't, Anika? Of course I can. I can advocate. Of course I can. I can make new legislation. Of course I can. Yeah, you can go out and do those things, but it's like if you were taking the foundation of a house, and I know I've used this analogy before, you're going to hear it from me all the time because this is the best way that I know to describe it. If you bought some property and there was a house there and you were deciding that you were going to build a new house, would you keep the old foundation with cracks, broken bricks, places that the cement is eroded? No, you're going to demolish the thing because it's not salvageable. That's different than something that needs a slight, tiny repair that you can be assured will be weathered. It will not end up impacted. In those cases, in those moments, then you know, okay, it's all good. Everything's fine. But for the most part, you're going to need to level that foundation and build a new one. And that new foundation needs to be sturdy enough that you can be assured that this house is going to last for as long as you want to live there, as long as you want it in your family lineage. And so, right now, the energy that we have to go out into the world and to fix everything else comes ahead of an assessment about whether or not the foundation is good. And what I would tell you is your foundation assessment is going to be faulty if you can't see clearly. And what do I mean by that? Well, if you're not really seeing what's happening in the world, if you can't see the strings, if you can't see that this is bigger than what's just happening in a single country, if you can't see that the things that are being unwound are connected to something bigger, then we got a problem. It's as if you went to the doctor and you said to the doctor, I have a fever, and then they gave you something for the fever and never checked any other symptom. Never looked to see if there was something else going on. What is the cause of the fever? The fever is actually a symptom. It's telling you that the body is doing something to fight something that does not belong in your body, an unhealthy condition that's happening on the inside. So the fever comes for that. The fever is a signal. It's there for information. It's not the thing, the only thing that needs to be addressed. And we can do Tylenol for a fever, but what happens when the Tylenol wears off? It's going to come back unless we're addressing whatever else is happening on the inside. Maybe your body is strong enough that it fights off whatever the issue is, and you come back to health, and then the fever doesn't become an issue again. But you still had to get to root cause. And I think a lot of us would like to believe that what we see on the surface is enough root cause that we can just go in and fix that, but that's not true. So, what am I saying to you? Your healing work, your decision to do the work on the inside of you is what's going to open your eyes to see the truth of what's happening in the world. You've got to actually see beyond what your humanness is showing you, beyond what you feel in this moment, to actually know what needs to be done. Let us just agree. We're not going to build a new house on the same faulty, crappy, shabby foundation, because that's what it is. Pardon the interruption, but I could not miss the opportunity to tell you about our upcoming event, Your Heart is Calling. This intimate conversation is all about the real truth of love. how love really works, and how, when you have an understanding of the way God designed love, you can ensure that you never run out, that you never feel depleted, that you never feel like you've given more than what you had available. When I learned these insights about love, it transformed my relationships with everyone in my life. I can now give from a place where I feel full. And I'm so excited about it that I want to share it with all of you. You can purchase your tickets now on Eventbrite by looking up the event Your Heart is Calling, or go to my website at anikaapple.com. The event is Friday, March 21st here in Atlanta. I'm looking forward to seeing you. And now, without further ado, back to the episode. Anything that can be demolished in the ways that we have seen things undone in the last 2 months will tell you something already wasn't right. And the reason that God sent me to deliver this message to you today is because you're searching the wrong places. You're looking in the wrong place. You actually can't start doing the blueprint for the rooms and the design and start thinking about the color palette and the windows and the window treatments and all of that stuff and not focus on the foundation. The foundation is your healing self. I'd love to say healed self, but healing is a process. But you've got to be willing to begin to heal the stuff that is broken, the stuff that separates us, the stuff that keeps us, I hear you, that keeps us apart from one another. All of that needs to be addressed first. And then when we are addressing that version of the healing, then we can start to get that healthy foundation solid enough that we can build upon it. We want to rush in and do the thing outside of us. Hear me now. We want to rush in and do the thing outside of us because that's comfortable. It's comfortable to say, look at what they're doing. Look at what's happening. Every time I hear somebody to refer to one political party of the other, oh, these people are doing this, oh, these people are doing that, and the names and all of that stuff, it makes me cringe. It's not because I find myself affiliated more with one than the other, but I'm like, how much longer are we? The election part of it is over. We now actually are all jointly responsible for what happens next. We all have a role in this, right? And so at the end of the day, the more we talk in that way, the more separation we're creating, and we're all in it together somewhat. Because here's the thing, when stuff hits the fan, nobody's coming to my door to say, Anika, you Republican or Democrat. As the things start to happen, more things start to happen. You're looking at People articles now where people are like, oh, people thought that if they voted for this particular person that they were going to be absolved from different things, and they're finding that they're losing their jobs and all this. It's terrible. But what's happening knows no image of a person. I know you're like, but the people do. You're right. The people do see people, but they're a symptom. They're the fever. It's the thing that you see that you want to address, but you're not seeing what's behind it. There's more. There's way more. So much more. And if I were to tell you what the more is in this moment, it would just take you to another place. And that distraction is unnecessary because right now you can't do anything about that. But what you can do is something about what's happening here. Where is love in your heart? Where is it centered in the way that you're moving through the world? Question number one. Question number two. When is the last time I really thought about my state of mind, the health of my physical body, the health of my emotional body, the health of my spiritual body, the health of my psychological self? When was the last time I thought about those things? Because you need to focus there first. Your work that you're going to do, the blessings that you're going to bring to the world are going to start from you taking care of yourself. They're going to start from your healing yourself. Your healing is required in order for you to see and know what's next. And that doesn't mean getting to a perfectly healed state, but it does mean engaging in that work. It means seeing yourself. It means looking at yourself. It means starting to heal what's going on within. And for some of you who are like, Anika, I'm good. I've been doing this healing work, so I'm good. Give me the assignment to go out and do the thing. Well, listen, first and foremost, I don't know about you, but every time I heal something, something else shows up because there are layers to this thing. We're going to be doing our healing work and it becomes more and more beautiful and it becomes more and more of an invitation. It doesn't feel like, sometimes I get annoyed, but it doesn't feel like a task. Like, oh, let me go heal. It's like, oh, all right, that showed up. What am I to do with this? It's an invitation for me to continue to become the best and highest version of myself. So that's what you are to do next. And then in terms of what your assignment is, I don't know. Are you called to help people heal? Because if you're called to help people heal, then create the spaces, start talking about the things, start sharing your journey. Use your platforms to talk about that instead of, the 5 things you can do today to grow your followership on a particular platform. Do both. But collectively, we have to do the work to heal. And when we do the work collectively to heal, it's going to change things for us. And when I tell you that the way forward comes with so much more ease, it would blow your mind to see how simple things become because we are seeing things from a perspective that is matched. One of the things that I was hearing before coming in to deliver this podcast is part of your work is to stop being so judgmental. And I know none of us like to admit that we are judgy. Like, I don't like judgy. You probably don't like judgy. And yet we probably see ourselves do some things that are judgy. Like we probably see ourselves jump to assumptions. We probably see ourselves judging others. And I think that is part of our humanness. It's part of the thing that we heal. It's part of how we grow. But I heard very clearly to tell you today to stop being so judgy, to stop passing judgment on other people. It's really important. It's said multiple times across the Bible, and it's a really important thing for us to learn in our lived experience because we don't understand. The more that you know that you don't have the fullness of everybody's experience, of everybody's assignment, the more that you will recognize that to judge is to make an assumption without having all of the facts. And it's unnecessary. It does nothing for us. So really look at yourself and ask where judgment comes from. What's behind it? Where can you replace the judgment with love, with empathy, with understanding, with grace? That's really important for you as you go through this journey. The last thing that I will share with you today is really near and dear to my heart. So a couple of days ago, God downloaded a healing capsule. I call them healing capsules. Healing capsules are um, they're spaces that I create virtually or physically. I've done one live, but they're virtual spaces that I create for healing to come forward, to come through me. And it comes through, it flows through me divinely as my prophetic wisdom comes through. And we feel into the space, the energy, the things that are going on with people, whatever is divinely moving through me. I speak into the room and healing happens. And some people experience healing right away, and some people experience the healing coming over time. The beautiful thing about it is once delivered, the healing is available. And so you can choose that you're ready and you'll begin to heal. And beginning to heal is not like we can connect it back to breaking your arm, right? Like you put it in a cast and it doesn't heal overnight. And so it actually means that the things have to come up. And so some of the things that you might have been feeling in that healing capsule begin to come up and show themselves. So the fever, the symptom again. And then you can start to work on that. So what God downloaded to me the other day was this very beautiful, precious healing session for Black women. And it is specifically for Black women specifically. And I'm launching it this Thursday. And it's free. And it is all about our relationship one to another. And you can check later on my website and on social media to see the details for this session. But it will be launched live. It will be available on YouTube. And I'm going to encourage you to gather your friends, your sisters, grab a Zoom and host small spaces for people to go through this healing together. There's power in experiencing the healing in a collective way. And the heart of this is about our relationship to self and relationship to others. I imagine that as we go through the next several months, that there will be lots more healing spaces. I know I will have some healing capsules that are coming up, which you can subscribe to my newsletter and see all of those upcoming events. It's the best place to stay up to date with all of that information. But we will need that intense healing work to help us move past things that are standing in our way of our growth and development. It's not by accident that Monday was our day of rest and that Thursday is the day that God has told me to release the healing capsule. And I'll be honest with you, I've been fighting with God. Like, I want to do this in a certain way and, a certain time frame and all of that stuff. And that's me. And God has been very clear that it must happen on the 13th. And so I'm going to follow what God has asked of me and deliver it to you and trust that you will take it into your spaces, your sister circles, that you'll take it into your ministry places, the places where you know that Black women need to connect. And humbly, I would say to you, for anyone who's listening who is not Black, here is what God said to me. I said, I am someone who is very passionate about the people that I support, and I definitely, in my practice, I will support men and women. I am definitely called to work with women in particular, and that is, and while I may work with a lot of women of color, it's not specifically just women of color. And so I was like, so, what do you want me to share with people about why this particular offering is just for Black women? And I love God's response, which is why I share it with you now. God said, you can love your neighbor, but it doesn't mean you invite them into family therapy. And I want you to understand, for those of you who are not Black women, that this in no way means that you don't need your healing journey. It just means that this particular healing capsule is for something that Black women need to have the opportunity to navigate within ourselves. It's really important for that. And so in the same way that, you would take onto yourself a remedy that is for you, this is a remedy that is for Black women. So, more to come on that. I will make sure that later I have the information in the show notes for the podcast. For those of you who are watching the replay, again, it will be available on YouTube. And I look forward to supporting you all in that way. Thank you for joining me for the Anika Apple podcast. If you're thinking now and you're swirling around what to do around healing, there's a couple of things that I would offer to you. First and foremost, we have a community called the Healing Crusade. It's a great place to do your individual work on healing while being surrounded by a community of people. We focus on the 4 tenets of the body: the physical, emotional, psychological, and spiritual body. And each month we have a monthly focus where we're looking at a particular area. Right now we're working on wealth. Next month we're working on the physical body, but where we have challenges and we offer different resources to help and support you as you're doing your introspective work. So it's a great opportunity to move at your own pace and also be supported by others. And the beauty of healing in a collective environment like that is, just like I shared earlier, when you're doing the healing work, it becomes available for others. So we have the experience of supercharging our own healing experience because we're in community. The other thing that I would offer you is obviously, like, part of my work is in healing. And so there are some sessions that are available. You can check the link in my bio. Soul to Crown, Crown to Soul is a beautiful divine guidance session that has the opportunity to help you connect more deeply with your purpose. It does a lot of beautiful work to heal. And then there's also coaching available through advisory or integration coaching. Last, I would say to you is, if you haven't joined the mailing list, please make sure you do so that the other healing capsules and events that are coming up will come right to your mailbox, and you'll have the opportunity to join us for one of the ones that come up in the future. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of the Anika Apple Podcast. As always, I am wishing you so much peace and blessings. See you soon.